Hey there, everybody. This is Mike. Welcome to Spice Files. Joined once again by my good friend Dave. How you doing?
Hey Mike, good. How are you?
Good. Well, we're going to talk about the lightning ball today. Maybe you want to start us off by just kind of telling us what the deal was, and
Yeah, sure.
then we'll go from there.
So the Lightning Ball was a one-day webcam old school event. Played using Eternal Central rules, and we had 86 players, I think,
Nice.
representing like a couple dozen old school clubs from the U.S. and Canada, and a couple countries. Actually, we we um we experimented with a different start time. So this started at 4 p.m. Eastern, and went
Mhm.
until midnight Eastern, which works out if you're on the West Coast or in Hawaii. And we had the Dudes of Paradise with us, but doesn't work out as well if you're in Europe. Which
Mhm.
for those guys, it was a 10 p.m. start time and a 6 a.m. end time. But we still had, I think, like four or five guys join from Europe and pulled the all-nighters, which was pretty crazy.
Yeah, well, I kind of imagine that that makes sense from a decision making standpoint for running the event because it was four strips, and the Europeans are maybe a little less interested in that anyway. So.
Yeah, that was the theory, right? The format part of it, but then the other thing was just like for my own purposes, like I know like as an MTG dad, it was a lot easier to have most of my Saturday like with my family, and then just say, okay, from 4 p.m. on, I'm not
Mhm.
available. That's a little bit easier to do on the home front than like 9 a.m. to 6 p.m. or something. That some of
Mhm.
these days have been.
Sure.
Um, and on that score, I think it worked out really well. So I don't know. 2020 has been a year for experimenting with the different structures for these tournaments. I mean, one day webcam tournaments weren't even possible before COVID,
Mhm.
and I don't know. I don't imagine that they'll stick around post COVID because we'll be, using our time on Saturdays to actually travel to events and
Yeah.
that kind of thing. But it has been nice to kind of run a bunch of different experiments to see what works and what doesn't, and see how changing things like the format or the time or the structure have an impact on attendance and what the decks looks like and the types of people who come out to play. So
Yeah. That's awesome.
but yeah, in all, like I think we had a really nice day. We played 7 rounds. Had some interesting decks, and including a bunch of cool decks at X1, which was
Mhm.
which was neat. And then we raised just over $1,000. I think like $1,050 or something like that for the Greater Boston Food Bank. So
Awesome.
some charity action there as well.
Yeah. Well, yeah, that's pretty cool. I definitely know that there's a lot of people who appreciate having a four strip, event to play in online now and again. So,
Yeah, absolutely.
I think there's certainly plenty of one strip events to dig into if that's your thing. But there's not quite as many four strip.
Yeah,
Uh,
definitely. Like saw a need to to do an event for the EC folks as well. So was happy to do it. Had a great time.
Very cool.
Should we dive in here?
Yeah, sure. Um, this first one, when I was looking at it, I was thinking, oh, I'll probably have to reassemble this image for when I show it to everybody. So you'll be
Oh yeah,
seeing
it's very
the reassembled
vertical.
one. Yeah, it's just very vertical.
There's actually
So it's
three
a
separate photos, but I'm glad
yeah,
that he at least stitched it together for the
yeah,
submission.
yeah.
Um,
It still looks nice.
oh,
You can see every card. So
oh, and we should say we have 9 decks to cover, and we're going to go in alphabetical order by first name. So these are not ordered. The jury is still out on who is the spiciest, although I expect that by the time this is published, we will have declared a Spice Master.
sure.
Um, anyway, this is Chris Wins from I think Missouri, and he actually went 6-1 with his deck. I mentioned there were a couple interesting 6-1 in the mix, and he literally went X-1 with Bartel Rune Axes and Fallen Angels and Two-Headed Giants,
That's pretty
um,
sweet.
and Elves of Deep Shadow. Yeah, I think it's a great pile. I mean, I personally love Jund just as a color combination. I know he's
Mhm.
splashing for the mandatory Ancestral and Time Walk here,
Sure. Yeah.
but this is a Jund list with some disruption. Um, you've got the hymns, you've got some. Well, you've got the strips, of course. A little bit of artifact destruction and whatnot. And then you're just like ramping into fatties and
Mhm.
swinging with Juggernauts, with Fallen Angels, with the Bartel Runaxes. So it's a kind of a ramp and fat guys with a little bit of disruption. And it's
Yeah.
just it. I don't know what's interesting here. I think is like the creature mix and also like the choices for the the mana base. You'll see there's only one strip and one or no factories.
Yeah.
Just to make all the colors work.
Yeah, for sure. I also think you don't see decks with just like birds and Elves of Deep Shadow too often. I mean, usually Land of Worlds is in there somewhere as well, but he doesn't really want that here, I don't think so.
Right. Yeah, I think the idea is that if you're starting with green, you want to be able to hit black for your hymns and your angels and stuff.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, makes sense. Yeah, I could even kind of see maybe in like a different version of this, like maybe playing some Hypnotic Specters, maybe in the sideboard or something. Is something that you'd probably be able to cast off of all those one drops. Going into turn 2, playing a 3-drop on turn 2.
Yeah, definitely. Right. Like if they have a bolt, they're going to bolt your bird, right?
Yeah. Exactly.
And then they don't see the turn 2 hippie coming.
Yeah.
So the dorks in a way kind of make the world a little bit safer for the hippie. And actually that goes true, or the same holds true with the Juggernauts and Fallen Angels, right? Those are X3s. They get bolted, but
sure.
if you have dorks, they tend to suck up like that early removal sometimes, especially before people know what you're doing.
Yeah. Yeah, but yeah, it seems like a pretty strong deck, and I actually really like Bartel Runax. That's a cool card. It doesn't get played very often, obviously, but it's
a really neat card, and it also has the sneaky like. It has vigilance, obviously, but it also has the sneaky like can't be enchanted rider, so it can't be hit by like I don't know, paralyze or spirit link or control magic or some the other things that people like to play on your creatures sometimes. So I don't know. I think it's a sweet card. It's a house too, 6/5 or whatever.
Yeah, I know you and I have actually played it not that long ago because I think we both had it in some 1.5 decks that we played. And I think it's pretty reasonable there.
I've played it, like I don't know. Last year I was on a Jund like more like land destruction and fatties kind of kick, kind of like traditional like Ponza, as it were. But this looks kind of eschews the landy and just goes for. I mean, him is sometimes landy anyway, right? It's enough kind of early disruption to knock them off their spot potentially, and then just stick one of these guys and start swinging. So.
Yeah. I've also probably said this before, but one thing I've always enjoyed doing is animate deading of Bartel Runax. It's the only way that you can get an enchantment on them. So I usually played one in in reanimator lists because it was already pretty heavy, like black green usually, so it was kind of easy to play one of those and actually have it be castable,
Yeah.
So.
The main deck terrors here are kind of interesting. That's a cool meta call, I think. As long as you don't run into workshops or whatever, I think terrors are going to be pretty good. Everyone's playing Serendib, Efreet, and whatnot.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, and the sideboard's got the I think some things you might expect. I mean, there's Red Blast and Gloom, right? But the other stuff's a little bit more out of the ordinary, I'd say.
Oh yeah. Pyrotechnics is hot. You don't see Assassin very often, and there's Gaia's Avengers, I guess, for the shops matchup. Take your terrors out, put your Gaia's Avengers and your Shadowstorm in, right?
Yeah, Gaia's Avenger and Shadowstorm are maybe not the combo
not
you're looking for,
not great friends.
but yeah, that's okay though. I mean,
but if you resolve your Shadowstorm, you probably won anyway. So
yeah, for sure.
Cool, nice job, Chris, and great run. This is
congrats on that.
With this deck, that's like a lifetime achievement.
Yeah, for sure.
6-1 with Bartel Runax, and in like an 80-something person event. That's pretty awesome.
Yeah, that's awesome.
All right.
Next up, we've got Craig Windsor.
Yeah, Craig Windsor's deck. This is, and I think Craig is out in California. He's one of the SoCal guys. This is like a land destruction kind of icy venom, kind of screw over your lands kind of deck. But I think at least in game one, it's like these 4 mazes that really that are really interesting, right? A lot of the issues sometimes with these all-in land destruction decks is that you will let like some number of little creatures kind of leak through. Like if you're playing against a deck that can survive on 1 or 2 mana, it makes it a little tougher. But he's got bolts to answer those, and then the mazes to kind of hold that stuff back. But otherwise, he's just trying to destroy all your mana sources, and then really really put the squeeze on with Vice and the Onks and the kind of it's kind of curious because there's like almost like an ATOG-ish artifact package here, but you see the ATOGs are in the board.
Yeah, I was gonna say that's quite the board. It's almost like a sort of transformational because in the other than the factories, there's no actual creatures in the main deck, right? So I imagine it comes down to maybe like taking out a lot of the land destruction, because you can just land a Blood Moon anyway, and then what's the
Blood
point?
Moon kind of is land destruction. Yeah. So you could pull your Ice Storms to start for sure. You probably pull the Venoms. As lovely as they are, it's just kind of a funny way to win a game that you've already sort of won. Yeah. And I can say that from experience. I love Icy and Venom together. But you can pull some of that stuff and transform more into like a Moon Tog. Yeah.
And one of the nice things about having like a quote unquote combo with something like Icy Manipulator as part of the combo is that you can board out the other half and leave the Icies, and they're perfectly reasonable Magic cards.
Yeah, exactly.
So it just makes it easier for you to do this sort of transformational sideboard type of a strategy. I don't know if you exactly would call it transformational, but it sort of feels that way.
Yeah, no, it's definitely a switcheroo. Especially, they pulled their swords or whatever after not seeing creatures.
Yeah, but very cool. I like that. I feel like maybe just given what you said earlier about having like a 1 or 2 small creatures sneak through, I might just want this fourth bolt to be in the main deck instead of something else. But
yeah, sure.
But just because you said that, it made me think about that. Like, oh yeah, there's only 3 bolts in the main. I mean, all 4 of them are here, which makes sense. But yeah, that might be something I would do if I were to play this.
I mean, even like an Earthquake for 1 or something is sometimes a consideration. Like if you need some defense against a bunch of little guys.
Yeah.
So that's another card I would consider in this list.
Makes sense.
Cool.
Like it. It's awesome.
Yeah.
All right. So let's see.
This is hang on. Oh, Dane Knudsen. He is actually he lives in Minnesota, and I randomly a few nights ago I played a webcam match with him from the Discord, and I zoned in and it said Dane, and I thought I recognized Dane Malone's like playmat, and I started talking to him as if he were Dane Malone, right down to like making comments. I'm like, oh, I heard it's snowing in Minnesota. He's like, yeah, how did you know where I live? I'm like, aren't you Dane Malone? He's like, no, I'm Dane from Minnesota. I'm like, what? So there are apparently 2 Danes in Minnesota in old school.
Fair enough.
And that was my intro to Dane Knudsen. Sorry, Dane Knudsen. But anyway, completely unrelated. This is an archetype that I had called Black Ice before. Like it's like a mono black kind of prison-y. There's like a parfait package here, sort of. There's like a land destruction theme going on. There's a bunch of different kind of like prison-y elements to this. I tried to make this work one time with like a bunch of black cards, Ice Manipulators, the Landy, and like Worms of the Earth. But then you quickly remember that Worms of the Earth is just not a playable card. And you arrive at something probably much more effective, which is the deck that we're looking at right here.
Sure. Yeah, I've also seen some versions of this with like with Greed and Ivory Tower. So there's a couple different paths that you can sort of take where you're playing the prison component of it, and are you trying to kill them with Vice, or are you just gaining a bunch of life and maybe playing Greed on top of that, or something. So I think that there's a couple of ways to build this sort of a strategy. But I definitely like the one showcased Yawgmoth Demon.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, I mean it's definitely a cool deck. I can see playing a deck with Underworld Dreams and Howling Mine is definitely a lot of fun. You draw a lot of cards, and your opponent is sad about it in more than one way.
Yeah, I like Yawgmoth Demon here with Vice. Vice is the kind of card like, okay, if you're on the play, you Vice them, like they take whatever their 4 or 6 damage or whatever, and then it just kind of sits there. With the Yawgmoth Demon, you actually have a purpose for it. Like if you got Vice, it's just kind of hanging out. I think that's kind of neat.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I guess here I was gonna say, I mean, maybe they're drawing extra cards off Howling Mine, but I imagine you're probably tapping down your mines if you can. So it's not really until you want to actually kill them with Underworld Dreams, then you're probably gonna let them draw cards. But
yeah, right. The Vice and Howling Mine thing I feel like never really comes together. If they're drawing 2 a turn, they're probably playing stuff out pretty aggressively. I get that you're blowing up all their lands, but I still feel like some stuff is going to leak through.
Sure.
But that's what Paralyze is for. That's what the terrors are 4 out of the board. Pestilence is amazing against the little dude decks. I hope that Death Grip came in.
Yeah.
At some point. Glad I didn't run into Death Grip with my mono green deck.
Yeah, I can imagine.
And Evil Eye is great. I mean, once they see that you're really not running creatures, you bring those suckers in, and they are hard to deal with. It's a big body. They don't die to burn, really. And they probably pulled their swords by game 2. So
yeah. The only thing I'd say, just looking at it, I was, when I first saw the list, I was looking around for where the Abyss was. And
for sure
doesn't have any. I mean, that might just be a budget concern.
Yeah, it could be a
whatever
constraint.
But which that happens. But but yeah, I would think I'd want some here. It means the Yawgmoth Demon maybe is more questionable in that sort of version. But anyway. Also, on a weird side note, I'm pretty sure I saw that Chaos Orb for sale in the Discord at one point.
I feel like I've seen a few like that, like with that kind of extension.
Yeah, it's cool. Like it.
It's very cool. Yeah.
And then I mean, I'm just sort of looking at other things in the sideboard. I mean, there's some other standard stuff like Gloom. You mentioned
Gloom makes a lot of sense in a prison type list.
Yeah.
Like more so, like sometimes people just have Glooms in their board because they don't have white cards. They do have black cards, and they can't think of what else to put there, and it's a powerful effect. But I think it actually means something here. It dovetails with the rest of the strategy in a way that doesn't necessarily happen. Sometimes people just stuff those Glooms in.
Sure. Yep. And I guess one other thing I was going to mention is, as far as Gloom is concerned, is in a lot of decks that's sort of your quote unquote answer to things like Circle Protection. And here I'm not sure that I mean, maybe that matters because you're trying to kill them with Underworld Dreams.
Yeah, but if they're activating Cop Black to deal with your Underworld Dreams, you're in a really weird situation. Yeah,
and I guess Cop Black is not the most commonly played Circle Protection anyway, so you probably just don't have to worry too much about it. But I mean, you're totally right. It just jives with the rest of the strategy. So same with those paralyzes. I like the paralyzed choice as well.
Yes, absolutely.
So.
Great, cool deck, Dan.
Cool deck. All right. Okay, David Third up next. It's still loading. There it goes. Okay.
Yeah, David Third. This is okay. All right. People might roll their eyes. They're like, "Oh, this is not spicy. What are you guys doing? Showing like a blue-red burn deck? Come on, it's got Serendibs. It's got the Flying Men. It's got counter spells. What gives? I don't know. I looked at this and I saw some rather untraditional things. I mean, depending on how traditional you consider Electric Eel. I know Electric Eel was a staple of the blue-red counterburn decks in old school circa, whatever, 2014 or something. But times have changed a little bit.
Yeah.
Thought the eels were interesting. I thought the three force spikes were interesting. Interesting, maybe format call. Given that this is EC, that you have just lower source counts across the board in terms of like lands on the table. And force spike becomes a bit more attractive in those contexts. We also have some other mana denial. In the 3 main deck fluxes, but also these 2 main deck mana vortexes. Mana vortexes, not often seen. For those who don't know what it is, it's basically the blue Armageddon. It's a very slow kind of Armageddon effect. It costs 1 blue, and then when you cast it, though, you have to sacrifice one of your isla or one of your lands, right? So
one of your lands,
presumably a land that you just tap to cast it. But then every upkeep thereafter, everyone sacks a land. So you pass the turn, your upkeep, your opponent sacks a land on their upkeep. Then it goes back to you. Then you sack a land, and then it disappears only when all the lands are gone. So basically, you can like live in this weird limbo for several turns where people are deciding whether to play lands into it or not, and hopefully you're pressuring them with your flying men and your dibs and whatnot while all that's going on.
All of your cheap threats that you have.
I mean, unfortunately, Mana Vortex takes away the eel's fire breathing ability or whatever.
Yeah,
because you're probably sacrificing the lands that you need to activate that. But it's also a late game card. It's the Armageddon kind of on the top of the curve. Is how you play it, and maybe by then your eel is dead anyway. I don't know.
Yeah, maybe. I like the choice of main deck energy flux as well. I'm sure that's pretty good against all the various ATOG and shops lists that are pretty dominant in force strip formats.
Yep. He's only got the Moxes, the 2 on-color Moxes, and the Soul Ring, right? It's permanent. It's permanent artifacts. He's got the Lotus and Chaos Orb, but those are consumable. Right. Yeah, I think. I mean, God, everyone plays. If you've got them, everyone plays all the Moxes. Shops is obviously always around. ATOG is always Energy Flux is a beating for ATOG decks. And this is main deck Flux is just a really nice way of competing with those. Post board, of course, they bring in Rebs and such. But you also have a lot of blue stuff to target with Rebs. So.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, man, I like Vortex quite a bit.
Me too.
I would be so scared to play it. I feel like I would just play this card, blow up one of my own lands, and then someone would disenchant it, and I'd be so just so concerned about that happening. Or maybe
the 2-for-1, like when they just for sure.
Yeah, I mean, granted, like what you said, you're playing it out. You probably play it out like after your energy flux or whatever. So maybe that they don't have a disenchant left, or maybe they. Or maybe, especially after sideboard, you can bait out the red blasts before you resolve Mana Vortex. But just a concern I have.
Played it, and you keep 1 blue up, and they need to tap all their mana to get rid of it, and you force spike it,
and you just force spike it.
Yeah, you
That's
just
true.
laugh like a super villain.
That's true. You do have counter spells. I mean, you're not just playing it blind.
David Third's collection's so nice. Can we just say that? These cards are really sweet.
That's true.
God. Nice collection. I don't know. Remove souls in the board. I don't think we can leave this deck without just mentioning remove soul as a card. It's an easier counterspell to cast. You can board out actual counterspell. If you know the things that you want to counter are creatures.
And then what? And then I think 2 unsummons as well. Right?
Yeah, unsummoning their guy as all of their lands are being vortexed away is actually pretty funny. They might not be able to recast their 4 or 5 drop.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, no, it seems like a fun deck. I feel like a lot of the various blue-red style decks, especially in Force Strip, are more centered around playing bolts and chains and side blasts, and then
Yes.
playing wheel and twister and that sort of thing. And then there's different variants on that strategy, right? Like
Well, then
there's H on base or
it gets
not.
all rotated into lion or into Dibitog pretty fast too.
Right. Yeah. Exactly. But this is kind of more on the I would say more of like a tempo style deck
Yeah.
instead, where you're like, oh yeah, I can get some extra damage in by bouncing your the creature that you played this turn, so you don't have a blocker, and playing the game in that type of a manner. And so
yeah, I think it has a ton of play to it. It seems very nonlinear. And I don't know. You could roll your eyes again. It's again at the end of the day, it's blue red counterburn.
Sure.
But I just thought there were a lot of like non-traditional choices here that made it kind of worthy of pointing some of these things out that people don't see too often.
Yeah, for sure. I like it.
All right.
Awesome. Next up, we have this list that I actually had glossed over it when I first scanned through the deck list because I just didn't look in the bottom right corner. I just saw a Merfolk deck and I was like, okay, it's a Merfolk deck, cool. But this deck is way cooler than that. So
yeah, so this is Jason Beaupre from Old Order, Old School in Pennsylvania, and it is a Merfolk deck. But what he's really trying to do is use Alchor's Tomb in a deck. What is Alchor's Tomb? It is it's an artifact. I think it's from Legends, right?
I think that's right.
I can't really tell. That looks like a weird Italian edition.
I think it's an Italian copy.
Anyway, it's got to be from Legends, right? We'll say it's from Legends. Cost 4 to cast. And it has an activated ability 2 and tap. What it does is it changes the color of a creature that you control. You have to control the creature. That's it. That's what it does. It changes the color of a creature.
Technically, it's any permanent, so you could do it to something else too.
Oh, is that right? Okay.
Yeah, that's not relevant here, but
permanent that you control. Control. All right, thank you, Mike.
Yeah, no problem. And it is in fact from Legends. I looked it up on Scrapple.
Oh my goodness. So what's going on here, my friends, is that if you control magic or Sea Singer, your opponent's creature, say that it is not blue. Say that you control their Sengir Vampire, their Starry Angel. God forbid a Tetrabus that hasn't hatched its babies yet. That would be pretty amazing. That's what you want to grab.
Would be sweet. Yeah.
Once you grab that, you use Alchor's Tomb to turn it blue. And then you use Hamrad's Spawning Bed to sacrifice their creature, making a bunch of Cameron tokens.
Yeah. The cool part about the example that you mentioned with like the Tetrabus, right, is that it's all based on what the mana cost of the sacrificed creature.
That's why I use that example.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, but which is weird to me. I feel like that usually wasn't. That's not how a lot of the cards work.
Like
right?
An attribute that cards use. Yeah.
I mean, nowadays I think it's more common to see that, in like newer Magic cards, but I feel like that wasn't often a thing. It usually would have been like the sacrifice creature's power or whatever. That would be kind of cool too. I guess that's more manipulatable. Maybe that's why they did it this way.
Yeah.
You don't want to like be able to berserk your guy and then get extra 1/1s off of it. I guess they gotta worry about those things and
or toughness, right? Could you imagine like righteousnessing your own thing and then getting 7 extra camera tokens? Man,
yeah, that'd be sweet.
Why isn't it?
But yeah. This is a cool deck. I'm partial to these sorts of strategies where you have some sort of a sack outlet that gives you a bonus. We sort of saw that a little bit in the earlier deck we were looking at with the Fallen Angels as well, right? And you have a similar sort of thing. That deck didn't have a gain control of their guys aspect to it, but but yeah, it's definitely something that I've been messing around with lately. I've been in the Diamond Valley space, and this is you're not getting life here, but you're getting creatures, and it's just sort of usable with all the rest of your guys, right? I mean, just sacking a dib that's going to die
Right, indeed. You can, if you have the mana up, it's like 3 mana, right? 1 blue
Yeah.
to use the ability. Yeah, right. You can get value for sure because it just blanks removal.
Yeah, and or even same example. Maybe you need to kill your Serendib because it's going to kill you. Right? I mean, you have an out for that main deck. So
Sure,
I
get
like
some
that.
value. I like. Okay, so otherwise you've got some typical Merfolk things, right? You've got magical hack to give them islands, so you can attack with your island walkie fish. And you same thing, phantasmal terrain in the board. How about that steel artifact? Another way to grab the 6 cost or the whatever.
Yeah.
Grab a Suchi, grab a Tetravis, grab a Triskellion's a little bit harder to grab because it could just commit suicide, but I don't know, Juggernaut or something.
So as far as Sea Singer goes, like okay, that's why he has the magical hack.
Magical hack, activates the Sea Singer's ability.
Yeah, if they happen to not be playing islands.
He can also hack them a mountain if he wants mountain, or what do you call him, River Merfolk to have that ability. But yeah.
A random thing that's just made me think of. I played a 1.5 match just the other day, and I luckily I didn't cast my tsunami because my opponent was sitting on a magical hack.
Wow.
I just never got around to casting it.
I got blown out by tsunami in 1.5 literally yesterday. Cliff tsunami'd me, and this is despite me playing literal Talarias and Svelunite temples and stuff
to get around that a little
in my deck, knowing that tsunami was going to be a problem. It still didn't come together for me, but look out. The only other thing I'll say here is that once you have succeeded in Magical Christmas Land, taking their 6-drop, turning it blue and converting it to camera tokens, the next turn you just slam that Sunken City and attack for 12.
There you go.
And you're a happy Magic player.
Yeah. I almost sort of think this deck could use Mishra's Factories, because you could Alchor's Tomb them as well and then sack them. Like if you go to attack, and I mean, I guess you have to have a lot of mana up to do that whole thing.
But if you do that, if you
swing.
sack them, they don't make camera tokens.
Oh right, there. Sorry, I was back on the power toughness thing.
Yeah, I got you.
Never mind. Thanks.
I like where your head is at. You can make blue factories though to pump with your Sunken Cities.
Oh, that's a good point. There you go. See? But I no, now that I'm thinking correctly, no, it actually makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, I think if this were in a one-strip environment and you just had more budget for, for your lands,
sure,
you could see some factories here, or some, I don't know, Pendelhavens for your little Merfolks, or your camera tokens. Indeed, actually, like that off-color Pendelhaven. Haven't mentioned that I like Pendelhaven.
Yeah, I think everyone knows that.
Yeah. All right, Jason Beaupre, this deck is ridiculous. Thank you, sir.
Very cool deck. All right, I've got another deck from Jeff Liu.
Oh yeah. We've seen a lot of that. Seen a lot of that carpet, haven't we?
Yeah. This has a lot of cards that I like.
Oh boy.
Yeah, I mean, I like that it's sort of a workshop deck, but it's not all in. It's not like, it's not playing 4. It doesn't really want 4, I don't think. You kind of just want 1 eventually.
A lot of colored cards too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Oh boy.
Yeah, this is actually, we were looking at the mono black deck earlier, right? And this is sort of, this isn't mono black obviously, but this is doing some, sort of kind of similar things, but also it has a little bit of that Ivory Tower I was mentioning, and there's an Abyss in here. It's got like a different end game. It has like, Titania's Song maybe, or that sort of thing.
Eureka Mirror Lich, yeah.
Yeah.
So I like how it has one of each fog.
Yeah.
Oh, classic.
Yeah, I mean, there's just a lot of,
Okay, so
interesting things happening here.
This deck is unpowered, by the way. That's one thing that he wanted to do. He wanted to be in for the unpowered prize. I know afterwards he said that he would definitely put like Moxes and such into it.
in here. Yeah.
Yeah, could definitely use that. Although Moxes, I guess if you're going the song route,
Mhm.
maybe not Mace, but you really, if you're playing all this weird stuff, you do need Moxes to cast them at some point.
Sure. I
Conquer
kind of like
Pirate.
going down if you're not going to have Moxes, maybe like at least going down the full set of Felwar Stones path.
Sure. Yeah, he's got the one there.
Mhm.
Clearly,
But,
very well thought out.
um, but yeah, and then I also like these other kind of weird one-ofs. Like there's an Arborea, which
Mhm.
is not played very often, but it's definitely an interesting card. And when you're sitting on like Howling Mines and Relic Barriers and Ices and stuff, you don't have to actually play anything. You can just sit there and draw extra cards.
Yeah.
And you know, so that's pretty cool. Island Sanctuary is kind of cool too.
Yeah, with the Howling Mines, he can just skip one of his draws.
Yeah.
I like the value Time Vault too. Sometimes there's a game state where you just like you don't really care about giving your opponent a turn right now,
Yeah.
and you can bank it for later.
Yeah. Yeah. Makes sense. Yep.
Some super villain stuff in the sideboard there.
Yeah, definitely.
The wall of spears and the
Wall of
pentacle.
spears. I mean, I had definitely I had a lot of Wall of Spears in my collection when I was a kid. I love the art. The art's great. I'm just sad that it gets bolted. I just wish that it was a 2/4 or whatever.
Sure.
Yeah, but it is a cool wall.
I think he was anticipating a ball lightning driven meta, and it's pretty good against ball lightning.
It's true. It doesn't die to your abyss, which is
right. And the fogs are good 1-for-1s against ball lightning.
It's true. Yeah. Yeah. Okay, that's fair. Yeah, I guess he's got the he's got ball lightning contained. That's for sure. Same thing with the Triskelions, right? And you can just like shoot a ball lightning for 1.
Ugh, brutal.
Yeah.
Well prepared.
Yeah. I also we probably mentioned this before on here, but I really like Nova Pentacle just as a card. It's hard to play, I think, in normal old school, but I think it has a place in some of the weirder offshoot formats that a lot of us have been diving into over the last year.
Yeah, for sure. It's an all-star in the singletons and the 1.5s and kind of slower formats of the world for sure.
Yeah, and just in a creatureless deck, it's pretty good. You know?
It's gross.
I mean, it's kind of like I feel like it's a more. It has a wider range on it compared to something like Icy, where like Icy has like a very predictable. This is the effect that you get, whereas Pentacle can like have it can, depending on the board state, it might make like more than one creature not attack you, right? And so there's just sort of like a wider range of kind of what it can possibly do.
Yeah.
But then you obviously get the situations where it doesn't do anything because your opponent has no creatures out. Anyway, so whereas at least with Icy you can tap your lands down or whatever else, but yeah, that is a cool card.
All right, a stab at Unpowered Mirror Eureka Lich.
Yeah, for sure.
And friends. Well done, Jeff.
Well done. All right. Jonathan King. All right, so we got the same thing kind of as our previous blue-red deck going on. People might look at this and go, well, this is just a blue-red deck. But I think there's a lot going on in this list.
Yeah, Jonathan King from the Minnesota scene. What made me chuckle here is is putting an unstable mutation on an egg and thinking about what happens. You have a 3/6, right, that you can attack with for a while, and then it reverts to like it's like kind of wallish type existence for a couple turns, but then it pops, like it will pop right after 6 turns. It's a ruck.
Yep.
Come on.
Yeah, that's pretty sweet. I have to say I have not actually seen anybody do that before. So I do like it. We were mentioned before, Diamond Valleys and stuff with Jason's deck, because it's kind of on the same sort of axis, grabbing their things and sacking them, and Rook Egg is usually in those sorts of decks, So I've been playing a good number of Rook Eggs, and it's a fun card to play. I like the dynamic it generates, It's you can just play it out as the little wall for a while, and it can sit there, and that impacts the board because it makes your opponent do different things, and then later it turns into something that ends the game.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I also like the one Old Man of the Sea. Makes sense.
Yeah, great with Diamond Valley.
Yeah, exactly. It's definitely all the blue options for stealing stuff. Sadly, I think aren't as good as Preacher.
Yeah, Preacher's
Preacher's
blue.
Yeah, it's just too hard to play. To jam Preachers into a list like this, I think. But yeah, and I like all the burn. It's definitely an aggressive burn deck, and you can do what you need to do. As far as maybe they're a slower deck than you, and so you've got a bunch of burn, and you can end the game that way, or maybe you got to hold the fort with your Rook Eggs, and you've got burn to kill the guys. So, but yeah,
I'm staring at this Tormod's Crypt
in the main deck.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, Atog can eat it.
Yes, it can.
Yeah. I think what was he expecting?
Maybe he really, really, really hates Reanimator.
Yeah, I mean.
Maybe he hates Twiddlefall, although Twiddlefall less of a thing in EC rules.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm not totally
I'm gonna
sure.
think about it. I'm gonna think about it.
Huh. And there's no well, I mean, yeah, he's got Time Twister. I mean, you can crypt and then Time
Yeah,
Twister.
sure. No, against like a control deck or something.
Yeah.
And I think these like Diamond Valley-ish kind of mid-rangey decks have issues with hard control. And if you can tomb them and keep them from getting back all of their removals and powerful spells and stuff, if the game goes too long, I think that's like
sure.
It's a thing available to you.
Yeah, I mean, I might just put that in the sideboard, maybe.
Sure.
Put this ATOG over here in the sideboard in the main deck, but to each their own.
Indeed.
Yeah, and then I like Psychic Purges, actually. I think they're a reasonable card to have.
If you already have a fistful of absolutely.
Yeah. Other than that, I mean, the sideboard's a lot of things. Well, I don't want to say that you'd expect them, because I'm not sure you'd expect Triskelion out of a deck like this exactly.
Yeah. Well, I'm interested in the interplay between Bottle and his many Arabian cards. Now, Bottle, you can pull your dibs, you can pull your unstables, your Diamond Valleys. I think you leave your Ruck Eggs in, because you can always bottle your Ruck, your egg to make a Ruck. Bottle doesn't kill the token, for those who don't know about that little interaction.
Yeah, I'm kind of just wondering, like, when do you really go down that route, right?
I don't know.
Yeah. I'm sure
maybe you're sitting across from the Curd Ape Urnham for City of Brass for Serendib deck.
Yeah, that's true.
It's a thing that some people play.
Can
play.
I mean, yeah, it just makes it hard, because you do have a lot of cards to board out. I'm just wondering what you board out, for all of that stuff, right? If you're taking out, 8, 10 cards or something. Just seems like a rough thing to do. But I'm sure he had some plan. There's some kind of plan there, because you kind of have to, given the contents of the deck. If you put that in your sideboard, you must have some thought about how you're going to manage that. So, but it is nice that there's no City of Brasses, so you're not really impacting the colored sources in your deck.
That's a funny thing to notice. Although, what is in the upper? Oh, those are mountains. Okay.
Yeah, mountains.
I just didn't know what art they were. Yeah.
Yeah, and that is something also to say, that there's other than one mana drain and one counter spell, there's no other double, or no, and
Yeah.
the old man. Like
Well, he's got
there's just not
control
that many
magics out of the
double.
pool too.
Yeah, that's true. But there's not like a ton of double mana cost cards, right? So it
Right.
seems pretty reasonable to have the numbers that he's got.
Yeah, I just want to see unstable on an egg.
Yeah, agreed.
That's where I want to be.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
Awesome. Next up, we've got Nathaniel Gates.
Nathaniel Gates from the Philadelphia crew. This deck is on a copy machine or a scanner
I see that.
or something. With the sideboard in the paper tray.
Yeah. Nice. All
Love
right.
it. Some cool altars down there too.
Mm-hmm.
The Nope Blue Blast. There's a kind of like a Technicolor tome. What is the 5/6? Is that oh, it's a Modi. Old School Secret Santa 2019. It's a Mahamudi-jin.
Yeah, I see what you're saying. Yeah, it's a 5/6. Got it. Yep. I mean, this sort of deck is something. I know we've seen something like it before. I can't remember when. It was a while back.
This is like the machine gun archetype, right? The Hercules combo with the mana vaults and trikes and discs.
Yeah. But I mean, that being said, it's hard to find like totally brand new things in the old school card pool. So this is definitely like a cool list, and I don't think any of these are like fine-tuned overall, right? Like people haven't figured out what's the best version of this deck.
No, well, so, and I think this is notable because it's mono blue, right? There's nothing else going on. He's not, he has the Sapphire. Otherwise, it's relatively Sapphire Ancestral. I'm looking for other power. He's got Walk, but there's no other Moxes or anything like that.
Yeah. Oh, but that makes sense. I think, given the vaults,
yeah, for sure.
Yeah, I don't think you need the other Moxes really, and they're just gonna get, unless you, like, I'm sure there's times where you have to disc and you don't have recall, so
definitely,
you're just gonna blow up stuff that you don't want to blow up.
Yeah, for sure.
So,
yeah, but just the play patterns of like casting trikes, copying trikes, using all the spikes, bouncing everything, replaying your mana vaults, replaying your trikes. If you haven't done that out there in old school land, you should treat yourself to some machine gun at least once in your career.
Yeah,
and putting in the disc. Obviously, the disc thing. Like for those who also haven't thought about this, like you activate Nevinyrral's disc, you cast Circle's Recall, you bounce all of your stuff back, and then the disc thing, the trigger resolves, and all their stuff dies. Is how that works.
And you also get your disc back, right? Which is a bit
exactly.
If they had made disc, well, there are actually more modern day versions of Nevinyrral's disc, and they all sacrifice themselves when you use them or whatever.
Right. Disc only dies like once it's hit with its own ability, which is funny.
Yeah.
And if you've got a ghost ship sitting there, you can pop the disc and regenerate your ship if you've got
Yeah.
Blue mana.
Kind of like the blue version of Troll Disco.
Thanks.
Yeah, it makes sense though to maybe not play. In like the red versions of Troll Disco, you're usually playing all 4 trolls, but regenerating multiple ghost ships is not probably going to happen. So, so you can't play too many. I could see playing a second one though. It's pretty good.
It's pretty good. It blocks.
Yeah, I mean.
Very
it's
well.
a 2/4. Yeah, it's good. 2/4 flyer.
Stop Serendip, I'll tell you that.
Yeah.
And I love Sage of Latinam. I love it in these decks. It's
for sure.
It's like in a virtual way, it's like unkillable, right? Because if they kill it, you just eat whatever, something, a rock sitting around.
Yeah. It's something else that occurred to me here is this deck has the sort of beginnings or makings of potentially being able to include juxtapose.
Yes, right, because you can ship the
random thought.
You can ship over a spent Triskelion. You can ship over a tapped mana vault, stuff like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's not too far away.
Yeah, it would be an interesting thing to merge the two, probably.
To joke around with.
Yeah. Um, but yeah, yeah. I mean, pretty cool. I think as far as the sideboard goes, I think that's a lot of the things you kind of expect to see because
Yeah.
you're playing mono blue, so you've only got so many options, I guess. But
And you can't
um,
play Flux for sure. So
right, exactly. Uh, yeah, so I mean, I don't think you're really all that worried about, I mean, I'm sure Shops is still Shops and it's probably reasonably good against a deck like this, depending on how
well,
slow its draws are and things.
shops to
But
shops, but you're copying their stuff and bouncing their dudes away.
that's true. Yeah, yeah. I was just saying,
But
like they're
also,
probably going to be able to like play out what they do, and you're not going to be able to kill a whole lot, but you
yeah,
can
for sure.
bounce them or whatever. But yeah, having copy is good too. I like that. Um, but yeah.
The main deck control magics. I think he's got some game goods.
Yeah, no. He definitely does. Yeah, I just I don't. I guess what I was getting at is I don't think you need like additional stuff in the board. So like
for sure.
mixing out on Flux
Yeah,
isn't a
not
big
at all.
deal. But I'm sure that there's like some things against Shops in the main deck that if you could, you would maybe board them out. But I don't think you have to like worry about it really.
Yeah, I see what you're saying. Yeah, for
Yeah.
sure.
But yeah, cool.
All right. Well done, Nate.
Mm-hmm.
All right, and then last but certainly not at all least,
Definitely.
we have the man, the mad scientists of New England Old School, Paul Kovalov, and this is an Enchantress deck featuring what's its name? Enchantment Alteration. Is that the
the one mana blue card? Yeah,
is that what it's called?
Enchantment Alteration. Yeah.
Which is a one blue mana instant that lets you basically move an aura attached to something to another legal target, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's all it
does. I mean, it's got a lot of words on the Legends version, but it's literally just attached target aura attached to a creature or land to another permanent of that type.
There you go. Okay, so what's he moving? He can blight your land, and then when you tap it or it becomes tapped, the blight effect triggers, and then he can bounce it to another one of your lands.
Yeah, that's cool.
Kind of
it's like
Kudzu.
Just what I was gonna say. Yeah, except that Kudzu doesn't work properly anymore.
I know, it sucks.
So yeah,
it's a travesty.
It really is. Yeah.
What else is he moving? Okay, so he is moving. I mean, you can move
control magic.
And yeah, control magic, right? So he actually PM'd me, I think, before the tournament to say, hey, like, if I'm blocking with my opponent's control magic or my opponent's creature that have control magic, like during combat, can I enchantment alterations so that like I forget what the situation it was. I don't think it works the way that he wanted it to.
Oh, okay.
Because like as soon as control magic switches, like the creatures switch sides and then they're not attacking or blocking anymore. Like the attacking creature would still be considered blocked. Like basically he wanted to kind of like disharmony or false orders stuff by altering a control magic. But I don't think that exactly pans out. It is still funny to do that.
Oh, I see. So you were thinking like you block with it and then you like maybe switch the control magic to another attacking creature, and then is the original creature that was involved in the block,
I think the original
still
creature is still damage? Blocked.
Yeah, no, like it is, but I meant like I think you're right. You're not going to deal any combat damage with the creature that
right
used to have the control magic on it.
Exactly.
Yeah. I think it's removed from combat, but man, that's a weird one.
It's a weird one.
That's something I'd have to look up. I'm pretty sure though that if it changes controller, it probably is removed from combat or something. Because otherwise it wouldn't make sense. You'd have a attacking creature that like a creature that's attacking you that you control. It wouldn't make any sense. So.
Right. He can also move his spirit links out of the board. Like he puts those on a creature and then I don't know,
nice.
it would die or something. He could save it. Just kind of pull the old switcheroo. And he's triggering Enchantress off of, all these different different things, right? The blights, the control magics, the side blasts, the energy fluxes, the copy artifact. I love copy artifact with Enchantress. I think it's really really cool thing if you can get it to come together.
That makes sense.
in the superior links. Yeah.
One thing I was thinking about, I was looking at the the Legends version of Enchantment Alteration, and there's a lot of cards from that from the old school era of Magic that say weird stuff on them, like treat this as if a new thing has just been cast or whatever.
Yeah, it's like reminder text basically.
Yeah, but it actually, if it actually worked that way now, you get like an extra trigger off your Enchantress, right? Is like, and I think that's what they were trying to have happen, right? Is that which would be kind of cool,
as if it had been recast.
Yeah. So unfortunately, it doesn't work like that now. But I think it's just something to kind of hint at. I think that they, in a lot of these early designs of Magic cards, they had some interesting things in mind that have kind of been
they've fallen by the wayside.
Yeah,
I know. I don't even look at the card text ever, ever to understand what the card does. So I just don't even ever bother. But there is a lot of funny wording, and to your point, just like there were a lot of other interactions that have just kind of fallen by the wayside because things have gotten cleaned up over the years, which is, I mean, it's a better, I don't know, I think it's a better game as a result. Just everything is clear and things work in a consistent way. But you do lose some of that kind of, I don't know, there's a lot of interesting things that we are lacking in contemporary old school, the way it's played.
Yeah.
Because we don't have those kind of fuzzy and interesting, we don't follow the text as written.
Right. Yeah. It's I was going to say, when that's removed and it's all cleaned up, in some way it loses a bit of its charm. If that makes sense. Yeah,
definitely.
I don't know how else to phrase it really, but it's I feel like I certainly appreciate the fact that like the the rules of Magic are like streamlined and there's like something clean going on nowadays, but because it eliminates all of the like, I guess it kind of eliminates a lot of the rules arguments, right? Because there's a very clear answer, right? For like what's supposed to happen. So you avoid all those weird things when you get a new board game, and you like open it up and you're like, I don't know, the rules don't tell us what to do when this happens. So
you just decide, like
you just decide.
You make a rule.
And then you've got little I don't want to say argument necessarily, but you've got like two sides of the debate here, because it helps one person, hurts another person. You got to like figure that out on the spot, and at least we don't really have to do any of that anymore in Magic, which is, I think, an overall positive thing.
Overall positive, but yeah, something is lost for sure, and that something is kind of charming and novel for sure. I agree. I guess one last comment that I have on this deck is that a mana base is tuned and thought out when it has one Mishra's Factory in it.
And one Savannah.
Yeah, the exact correct number of these things.
Savannahs.
Well considered. This is cool. I hope he did some really nifty and weird things that his opponents had never seen before. I'm sure he did.
Yeah, I'm sure. And then this is also unpowered, right? Am I missing that? Unpowered?
Yeah, I believe that's right. I don't see anything. Yeah. So important to note, for sure.
Yeah. I mean, I guess library is as close as you get.
Library Soul Ring. I mean, in terms of power level, obviously. But, not technically.
Yeah.
Very cool deck, Paul.
One other thing I'll mention here. There's also some basic lands in the sideboard.
Sure, you gotta be ready for, I guess, Blood Moon.
I guess. I'm just wondering why those are there.
What else are we worried about?
I don't know, because there's already some basics in the main deck with the plains and the 2 islands. So he's got some extras of those.
Maybe he's just flexing. Maybe he just didn't care about the sideboard.
Like, I only need 12 cards in my sideboard. I don't need the rest.
Exactly.
I don't know. That's interesting. That definitely just caught my eye though.
Or tough guy.
Yeah. Tough guy, Paul. Got it. Okay. Cool deck.
Yeah. Well, this was fun. We had a lot of interesting things going on. These decks, there were some others that we just don't have time to feature, unfortunately, but they will be in the full tournament report. And just overall some neat stuff happening, even at the top tables. I mean, we had that Bartel Runex deck go X and 1. We had Tim Moran from Neos go X and 1 with Living Plane, which is awesome.
Mhm.
I went X and 1 with Mono Green. I guess,
You did, yeah.
I can share that. I'm pretty excited about that.
Well, when we were looking at the deck list, I almost put your name into my list, but I figured you didn't want to go over it anyway.
Oh, that's very kind of you. Unfortunately I cannot award myself prizes. So.
Exactly. No, but it was a cool deck. I like.
Yeah, it was. I mean, I would contend that it shouldn't be considered spicy because everyone should be respecting Mono Green.
Respecting Mono Green.
It's your 1.5 deck that it clearly is. Wouldn't ever go so far as to say tier 1, but
sure. Yeah.
No, I mean it was super fun. I had a great run. Really enjoyed it. Saw a lot of cool stuff on the way. I hope everyone who participated in the event enjoyed themselves. Had a good time. Appreciated doing something for the charity again, and thanks as always. It concludes my own personal organization of one-day events this year.
Got it.
And the next thing up for me, obviously, is the Winter Derby starting.
Winter Derby.
Yeah, signups will go up for the Winter Derby on December 16th. Yeah, exactly. Signups December 16th, and then games start as always the day after Christmas, December 26th.
Awesome.
And my house is collapsing around me
into utter chaos.
Yeah, for sure. But thanks as always, Mike. This was fun.
Yeah, it's awesome, and looking forward to the Derby, and I'm sure we'll talk soon.
Yeah, so, take care.
See ya.